910, Big 550, KTRS. Getting into a Twitter fight is just really cuts into your work schedule.
Absolutely.
Joining us now is Dr. James Scholes, is the assistant professor at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and is still a Show Me Institute fellow. Is that the official title?
That is correct. You're getting a doubleheader of the Show Me Institute today.
All right. You used to be with the Show Me Institute full time.
That's right. I was the director of education policy.
But now you're back teaching. You missed the classroom, huh?
I missed the classroom, and I was excited about the opportunity to work with students, with future school leaders, and help to shape the minds of our future educators.
Oh boy, heaven help us. All right. Dr. James Scholes, what is the Interdistrict School Choice Forum coming up tomorrow?
Well, so tomorrow I'll be talking about some new research that I've been working on for the past year, really. We haven't really heard much about interdistrict choice in the past few months. It's been kind of quiet.
Right.
But if you remember about a year ago, we were talking about it all the time.
Right.
It was a very hot issue where students transferred from Normandy and Riverview Gardens. And at the very beginning, when that happened, we heard all kinds of sort of outrageous claims. People saying how awful it was going to be, how devastating it would be for the sending districts, all these things. And so I wanted to ask the question, what happened? Did those things come to pass? Was it really as disastrous as some people thought? And
Refresh our memory. What was it that changed? This was you were able to transfer within the district, but out of the school you were going to.
No, I'm talking about June 2013. The Missouri Supreme Court says students in Normandy and Riverview Gardens can leave the district.
Got it. Okay.
And they can go to other districts.
Okay.
And they went to about 20 different districts. And when they did that, everyone was worried that they would overcrowd the receiving districts, that they would bankrupt the sending districts, and some of those predictions became pretty close to true. But there was lots of scaring people going on, lots of hyperbole about how awful it was going to be.
So you wanted to look at the facts.
So look at the facts. What happened?
And what happened?
Well, first off, I interviewed receiving superintendents, the superintendents in Francis Howell, St. Charles, lots of the area places.
Kirkwood.
Well, Kirkwood, all the ones that would talk to me.
Okay.
Not all of them would talk to me, but
sure.
And I asked them, basically that question: what happened? What did you do because of these students? And what I found was it was business as usual. Almost every place told me it was business as usual, and that's not to say they didn't do anything for these students. But when any student comes into your school district, if they're low performing, you screen them, you get them into the appropriate services. I mean, that's how you handle anyone.
Right.
And by and large, every superintendent told me it was business as usual for them, that they just put the students into the appropriate programs, tracked them into the appropriate classes, and it wasn't a big deal.
And they got along with other students.
There were no major issues with other students. I had several superintendents say, I never heard about anything. Even in Francis Howell, where they received over 400 students.
Which was probably the most controversial because some of those parents stood up and complained and so on and so forth.
It was the most controversial for lots of reasons. That's one of them. The fact that Normandy was busing students 20 miles to Francis Howell. There were lots of circumstances that made it a really controversial issue. But you had almost 400 students going there. But again, this is a 17,000 student district that had declining enrollment from 2005 to 2012. And so when they had an additional 400 students, they still didn't even reach the levels they were just a few years ago. So they sifted the students into schools, no more than 30 students to a school, no more than a couple to a class, and it was no major issue. And so on the receiving end, they filter the students in, business as usual, and the receiving school districts...
Did the students do better?
Well, so we don't have the statistics that show us, really. So we really need a study to look at that, and DESE thus far hasn't been forthcoming with me with the data. That's the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Right.
I haven't been able to get those data, and for good reasons. They're protective of student data. But if you look at the school level, the schools, we rate them with this thing called the Missouri School Improvement Program. And the receiving schools, they forecasted, people thought, it's going to hurt these districts.
Right, they're going to bring our test scores all the way down.
Right, and we didn't see that. Actually, in Francis Howell, their score went up just very slightly. So there was no real major...
So you can make an argument that these 400 kids actually improved the test scores in Francis Howell.
I don't know how tenable the argument would be, but you can't say that they hurt the districts.
Okay.
So you have the receiving districts, business as usual, filter the students in. In many cases, they reversed a steady decline in student enrollment, and they received millions of dollars from the students.
That's a bigger issue. Why the school attendance is going down in the Francis Howell School District?
Well, it's sort of a region-wide and statewide issue that over the past few years we've seen declining enrollment.
Not having the population, the birth numbers going down.
I think that's part of it, just sort of decline overall, and
in the region, which is which is another red flag. But we can talk about that at another day. Okay, so Francis Howell got millions of dollars. All these schools got millions of dollars to take in the kids who wanted to transfer.
Right.
And it seemed like the schools that received them were not only didn't implode, but actually got along very nicely.
Right.
What about the districts where the kids left from?
And this was a real concern for a lot of people. They said these districts are going to fail. They're going to then spread this problem to the broader area.
Right.
Well, what we saw was Normandy faced the most significant financial strain. They had very little in terms of reserves, and so they asked for more money and got more money from the legislature. Mm-hmm. Turned out they didn't need it. They ended the year with about $1 million in spending money. I wouldn't call it spending money, but operating funds.
Right. Slush fund.
Right. The state took them over because they were at a place where they very likely could go bankrupt. Mm-hmm. Riverview Gardens absorbed the brunt because they had more in reserves. And it's been a year. They have now right-sized. They've downsized their staff. Normandy has closed a school building. That was part of the problem. In most businesses, if you forecast, these districts lost a quarter of their students, okay? Mm-hmm. And if you forecast you're going to lose a quarter of your revenue, typically, I think as a business, you start making adjustments. Well, the schools didn't do that. Mm-hmm. And so as the school year started, they said the same number of students, same number of school buildings. And it wasn't until December till Normandy started laying people off and closed the school building. So we've seen them now very slowly start to right size. And you don't see near as many news stories or problems this year because the districts have adjusted to the decreased enrollment.
Have test scores gone up?
So, again, this was another claim that the sending school districts, these failing school districts, they're going to be hurt. The students left behind are going to be worse off because all the best and brightest have left. Well, the students who left very much resembled the students who stayed. They weren't the best and brightest. They were a mixture of good and bad students. And the sending school districts, going back to the MSIP score, that school improvement score where we rate the school districts, Normandy went down 3 points, and Riverview Gardens gained 16 points. So it's hard to say what the real impact was. Now, at the same time, I would love to be able to go in and say, look at these changes going on. The transfer program caused these changes.
Right.
But both school districts hired brand new superintendents. And so I don't know if the new changes going on are because of the superintendents or because of the transfer program. But so on the receiving school district side, you can't say it really hurt the districts. On the sending district side, we can't really say it hurt the district. It's sort of inconclusive right now.
Right. Now, that's true, but the opposite is then true. If it didn't help or hurt, then it didn't help or hurt. So why did we use and spend all the money to ship them 45 miles away from their home and where there's no conclusive proof that anything was beneficial?
Right. Well, that's a good point. But we didn't spend any extra, right? We spent the money that is supposed to be spent on these students, right?
Right, but it was spent in gas getting them to and from, as opposed to resources in the school and in the classroom and so on and so forth. Part of it was paid for tuition money to the receiving school district. So really it comes down to a philosophical question, whether or not you believe that the dollars that we allot for students to be educated is best directed by the student to the school of their choice, or it's best sent to the district to handle that money for the student. And this is what I ran into when I talked to a lot of the superintendents. Many of them said, oh yeah, we benefited financially. One superintendent told me it felt like we were taking blood money. We were taking money from a district that needed it. Mm-hmm. And so the superintendents, by and large, every single one of them said, we think those students should stay in their own community, that the dollars should stay in their own community. We should turn around those schools and help them improve. Mm-hmm. So you could make that argument. I prefer the argument that we should give that money and allow the students to direct the money to the school of their choice, to the school that's going to meet their needs. One of the things about every time someone talks about school, by the way, James Scholes is with us. He is a UMSL professor and a Show Me Institute fellow. What's this thing tomorrow? What's going on tomorrow, real quick?
Tomorrow morning, we have a breakfast at the Show Me Institute. Your listeners could find out more at the Show Me Institute website, showmeinstitute.org. And I'll be talking about this research, showing some numbers, showing how many students left, where they went, what the tuition money was, how the students performed on tests, the ones that left compared to the ones who stayed, and just giving the facts and examining, some of the hyperbole that we saw at the very beginning of this, that it was going to be disastrous, turns out it wasn't.
So let's talk about, when we talk about school choice, and it's a real issue, and everyone has a point of view, and I think everyone has a point. When we talk about school districts, let's talk about Normandy School District. They have quote unquote normal, regular kids. Right? Then they have kids who have special needs. In the city of St. Louis, I think there's a school district that has 150 some odd languages being taught in that school. Right. Those kids just can't go and choose to go to the Francis Howell School District, because Francis Howell doesn't have the ability to teach that kid from Nigeria. If you've got special needs and you've got an issue, Kirkwood's not going to take you. They're just not going to have the resources. So if you take the quote-unquote normal students and leave the quote-unquote special needs kids, what are you doing to those special needs kids?
Well, first off, I would say that evidence doesn't bear out. I don't think there's really clear evidence that says that's the case, that just the best are leaving and the worst ones are staying behind. But even if they were, and you make the claim that the unaccredited or the poor school districts do a better job of educating them, I think you'd be hard pressed to actually prove that. I mean, if you look at the scores of the students,
right? Yeah,
of those districts,
but I'm not saying I'm not saying the smart kids leave. I'm saying the developmentally disabled stay, and so we're taking money away from, because it costs more to educate a developmentally disabled kid,
right?
And it costs more to teach a kid who speaks Swahili comes on your door as a first grader. So we're taking money out of those schools, taking the quote-unquote normal kids and leaving them with the more expensive kids to educate.
Well, this is a claim, again, that's made all the time by school choice critics.
Right.
But it's a claim that doesn't pan out in the data. And we hear traditional public school people say, well, I've heard lots of charter schools here in St. Louis, they counsel students out and get the bad students to leave.
Right.
The charter schools hear the same things from students who come from the public schools to the charter schools, where they say, we think you'd fit better at the charter school. So I don't think there's really data that proves that to be the case. But let's just say it is. Let's just say that the most disadvantaged stay behind, or the ones with the special needs. Well, in my mind, I'm someone who believes in specialization. Well, now you've got a school that could really specialize to serve those types of students. And I think that's one of the beauties of school choice. And we're moving kind of now talking from interdistrict choice, but just choice in general.
Right.
You look at St. Louis now, the charter network that we have, the charter market. You have schools specialized in math and science. Some, you have a Montessori school. You have schools for the arts. All kinds of different types of schools that are specializing to serve a certain niche, a certain type of student.
Right.
And so if you have a school, we have language immersion schools. We have Spanish and Chinese. So we have schools that can start to serve these certain types of students. I think that's a good thing. Specialization in education is a good thing, but too often we think that every school must be everything to everybody. I think that's simply not the case.
Right. Interesting. Really interesting. Dr. James Scholes, always interesting to sit and listen to your points of view. What classes are you teaching over at UMSL?
Well, I'm in the leadership department, so I teach people who want to be principals and superintendents, teach school finance, educational research methods, those types of things.
That's not very exciting.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, that's why God makes us all. Dr. James Scholes, tomorrow at the Show Me Institute in the Central West End, the website to find out more?
Well, I'm going to correct you. We're not in the Central West End anymore. Well, we are. We're just in a different place, a different location. So if people are interested, they should go on the website, showmeinstitute.org, check it out, find the event, find the new location.
So you guys just moved within the Central West End?
We moved from one corner to another corner.
All right, fair enough. Dr. James Scholes, always a pleasure.
Thank you, McGraw.
9:24 here, Big 550.